Good day. My name is Kaylin, and I'll be your web event specialist today. At this time, I would like to welcome everyone to today's web conference. All lines have been placed on mute to prevent any background noise, and please note that today's web conference is being recorded. We will have a question and answer session at the end of today's presentation. You may submit questions via the Q&A panel located on the right-hand side of your screen at any time during today's presentation. Type your question in the open area and click Send to submit. We will also be taking questions via the phone lines, and instructions on how to do so will be given at the appropriate time. If you experience any technical difficulties during today's conference, please use the chat box on the right side of your screen to speak with me directly. You can also press *0 on your telephone keypad to be connected with an operator. It is now my pleasure to turn today's program over to Scott Hunter. Scott, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Caitlin. Hello and welcome to the ALACOMP OSAA online webinar for establishing a medical protocol. As Caitlin said, I'm Scott Hunter with the Loss Control Department, and I'm here with Kelly Marino today, and we're going to discuss how and why implementing a medical protocol is important for you and your company. During the webinar, we're going to discuss what exactly is a medical protocol, the steps to implementing this protocol. Kelly's going to give a comparison of two companies. It's going to show you the differences in having a medical protocol and not having one, and how establishing a medical protocol can help you as a company help us contain those workers' compensation costs and your medical losses. So let's go ahead and jump right into this and get started. What exactly is a medical protocol? Well, it's a program that we highly recommend here at ALACOMP that's set up by you, the employer, and what you do with that is you appoint a specific physician's office that's local to you that would be recommended for any of your injured employees to visit if they're injured on the job during normal business hours and it's not an emergency. You can also, through your medical protocol, can establish a prescription drug program that helps in aiding an injured worker get their prescriptions filled, especially if they are on some type of long-term medication as a result of their on-the-job injury or illness. If you have employees that work night shifts where your treating physician's office is closed, you're also going to want to include in the medical protocol what procedures that needs to be followed to get them that after-hours care or treatment. In some instances, the ER may end up having to be your option for those late night or after-hours calls. Also remember that when an employee gets injured on the job, it's not always going to be as simple as just sending them to the doctor's office. Sometimes the employee is going to need to go to the emergency room depending on how extensive that injury is. This is a decision that you're going to need to make based on the injury itself, how it occurred, how severe the injury appears to be, and the circumstances surrounding if that employer is closer to a hospital's emergency department, or if you can get them to a physician's office fairly quickly. It's often forgotten that this is a right for you as an employer to choose your physician's office. By implementing a medical protocol, it can be very beneficial to you, the employer, and to your employee. Some of the steps in implementing a medical protocol is how to choose your doctor. You want to have a physician that you can talk with, and it's a best practice there in those initial stages of setting this up that you schedule a meeting with that doctor. Let him know what you're doing on your end, what the expectations are. Schedule a time for that physician and any other practitioners that he may have there to come out to your facility. Look at what your employees are doing. This helps that doctor when it comes time for him to maybe put restrictions on an employee. If he knows exactly what types of job procedures or tasks that injured employee is performing, it helps him to set those restrictions. This is also when it's very important to have written job descriptions for each one of your job duties there. That's something that you can give to that doctor. The claims department here at ALACOMP can help you set up the pharmacy protocol in any prescription drug programs. You're also going to need to have a couple of forms, and we'll talk about some of those in some later slides. We'll talk a little bit about how your work comp cost is calculated. Kelly's going to run through some of those things in the comparisons. And then we're going to talk a little more about how establishing a medical protocol is beneficial to both you as the company and Allicomp. What a medical protocol is just a program that's set up by the employer to include a specific physician or doctor's office that's used in case of an employee getting injured on the job, pharmacy programs that are available to you, and then having a backup for after hours or ER information. The first thing you want to do is to pick a doctor. That's something that we can help you with. We can give you a list of recommended physicians in your area. You want to find a physician that's well known in the community and has a trusted practice. He's established. He's going to be there. A lot of communities now have some urgent care clinics that are setting up in that town or city. And some of these even have extended hours, so that's something you want to check into. A lot of these urgent care clinics stay open until 6, some stay open until 8 o'clock at night, so it gives you some additional options later in the day. You want to set up, like we talked about earlier, an initial visit with that physician and kind of explain what it is that you as the company are doing. Explain to him how you're setting up this medical protocol to treat your injured employees. You want to have the doctor come out, tour your facility. This is going to give you a chance to talk with him. This is going to give you a chance to ask questions. He's going to be able to discuss, or you can discuss with him some of the previous injuries that you've had. Gives you a chance to meet his staff. It gives his staff a chance to meet some of the people that he's going to be dealing with there from your office. This is also a convenient time to discuss their prescription protocols, what types of medicine they prescribe, how the refill process works. Also, always try to recommend that in cases where pain medication needs to be given, if they can give a non-narcotic pain reliever versus a prescription narcotic, have them do that if possible. During this conversation, you also want to understand if they have the availability to fill prescriptions there at their location, or if they send them to another pharmacy to be filled. If they get the prescriptions filled on site, then you can set up a pharmacy program to help make this process as easy as possible, and you want to make it as seamless as you can for the injured worker. If they send the prescriptions to another pharmacy, the employee is going to have a couple of different options. They can pay for the prescriptions themselves and get reimbursed from Allicomp, or the pharmacy can contact Allicomp, and as long as they have a first report of injury, Allicomp can approve the prescriptions and it'll pay for them that way, and that kind of makes it a little more seamless for the employee. Also, we know some of these injuries, they take a little longer to heal. So there's an option that where you can work with Allicomp and set up a pharmacy program where a medical company can ship prescriptions directly to the injured employee, which really makes it a lot easier for them to obtain their prescriptions rather than have to go to the pharmacy or contact the doctor's office every time they need a refill. This program is something that you as the insured will have to set up through Allicomp and convey to the doctor as well as your employees. But our claims department can help you with that process and walk you through all the necessary steps. We all know that every injury is not going to be cut and dry. Each one is going to be a different set of circumstances. Sometimes they're going to need to be referred to a specialist. For this to happen, you're going to need to discuss this with the doctor's office. And if the employee needs to be referred to a specialist, the doctor's office is going to have to contact Allicomp, our claims department, and have that referral approved. Also, you want to make sure that you're discussing with the physician's office how the payment process is going to work. And this is one of the forms that we talk about that you need to develop. It's just a one-page document that an injured employee or or if a supervisor or somebody accompanies them to the doctor's visit, that just gives some of our information, contact numbers here at Allicomp, an address. You want to put on there that the employee needs to be drug tested because it is an injury, and we want to get a post-accident drug screen. Having this form is going to kind of allow for a pretty smooth transition between that injured employee and the doctor's office. Make sure that you make an introduction there with the people that you're going to be dealing with. The more people that you meet, the better relationship you're going to have. And if issues come up, then you're a little more able to kind of work through and solve those. The reason that we recommend for them to come to your facility, I'd mentioned at the beginning, we want them to understand how your business is ran. We want them to have a grasp of the operations. We want them to have a grasp of what your employees are doing, their job functions. Again, always hit on these written job descriptions. It's very important that you have written job descriptions. Let the doctors walk around. Let them view some of these people performing their job duties. Discuss possible injuries, things that you think could happen, things that have happened. These are all important things for the physician's office to understand, and it's going to help them do a better job of treating your injured worker, and that does several different things. It's going to contain the cost of the claim. It's possibly going to get that injured employee back to full duty quicker, or at least get him to a point to where they can come back on some kind of restricted duty and still be productive and help the company. Now, once you have taken the time and you've set up this medical protocol, now's the time to discuss with your employees what you're going to be doing. You want to set up a short meeting with all of your employees to discuss the medical protocol and regarding the steps of what to do if you get injured and how this process is going to work. You want to make sure that they understand that they need to report all accidents or incidents immediately. Nothing's too small. We want to report those near misses just as we would an injury, because that near miss may lead us to being able to correct some type of hazard there at the facility, and then we can prevent that near miss from turning into a serious accident. Also, reviewing with them that if the injury is a true emergency, then they need to go to the emergency room instead of the physician's office. You're also going to want to discuss with them getting the prescriptions filled, make sure they understand how all that's going to work. Depending on how you set this up with your physician's office, let the employees know what they're going to need to do on their end, and that they have the ability to either fill these prescriptions on site. They're going to need to go to a pharmacy, or they have some of these pharmacy programs that are available to them. For Allicomp to provide authorization, the injured worker is going to need to make sure that the first report of injury has been completed and it gets sent over to us. It happens more times than not where we get a call for a question about a claim, and it turns out a first report's never even been sent in. So we can't get started on our end until we get that first report. And one thing that I would like to add on the first reports, we'd like for you to report everything. If it's something where there has been no medical treatment, then you can send it in right up at the top of the first report for reporting purposes only. Go ahead and send it in. And what happens is 2 to 3 weeks down the road, that little bump that they thought didn't need medical attention turns out they're still having problems, still sore, or an infection sets up. The claims adjuster's got a starting point. You don't have to go back and recreate all of that information, and we can go ahead and move forward from there. Otherwise, you have to go back and recreate some of that information. It's best to go ahead and document it while it's fresh. And sending in a report only is not going to affect you from a workers' compensation cost standpoint. The other thing I want to mention is if you have an employee that comes in and wants to report an injury but doesn't want to seek medical treatment, you need to develop a form to keep that is a medical declination form. And what that form is, it's going to be on your letterhead, and it basically states that the employee has reported an incident but they're refusing medical treatment. And then just keep that on file, and if something pops up later down the road and you have to send a first report in, you're going to want to send that form into us as well, because that kind of helps us in working through the initial stages of that claim. So the two forms we need to remember is the medical protocol form, which is the form that the injured employee is going to take to the doctor's office or the ER with them, or somebody's going to take to the ER after the injured employee's gotten out there. It's going to have some of the ALICOMP information on it, our address, phone number. It's going to have on there that this is an on-the-job injury and a post-accident drug screen is required. And then the medical declination form. You're going to want to keep that on file as an employee reports an injury. You just have them sign saying, I reported an injury, but I'm declining medical treatment because I don't feel like I need it. And then you can see here there's a sample letter that you can give out to your employees for implementing the kind of a corporate memorandum, just letting them know that we're setting up this medical protocol, and it's going to have some of the pertinent information that they're going to need. So what to do during normal business hours, what to do after hours or on weekends if an injury occurs, and just lets them know that, hey, these are the steps that you're going to take as an injured employee. These are what the company expects out of you to follow this medical protocol. So again, and just kind of wrapping up before we get into the comparison, wrapping up implementing the medical protocol, just make sure that you notify your employees in writing about this new program. And we've got the sample letter here. That's something that at the end, our contact information is going to be on here if you'd like to take a closer look at this. It'll be saved on our website. And you can go back and look at some of these sample forms and letters so that you're not reinventing the wheel, and it kind of help you get started. Also, make sure you keep a record of this notice in each employee's file. Now, from this point, what we're going to do is I'm going to turn it over to Kelly and let her run through some comparisons and let you look at some numbers in regards to a company that doesn't have a medical protocol set up and compare it to a company that does have a medical protocol set up, so we can kind of work through some of that. So, Kelly, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Scott. So as Scott mentioned, over the next couple of slides, we're going to compare two companies, Company A and Company B, to show how implementing a medical protocol can help in many ways. Please note that all this information is only for example to give you a better understanding of why we highly recommend implementing a medical protocol. The first slide here provides an example of two companies, one that doesn't have a medical protocol in place, which is Company A, and one that does have a medical protocol, which is Company B. This is an overview of one similar claim for both companies and how things differ between the two based on having a medical protocol and not. Both Company A and B's claims occurred during regular business hours. Both injured workers visited a doctor 4 times for their injury. Company A didn't have a medical protocol in place, so the injured worker went to either the emergency room or their family physician. Due to the injury the employee sustained, he did miss time at work. For Company B, they had a medical protocol in place, so they used a treating physician's office that was chosen by the company and were able to get back to work doing light duty, so no time was lost at work. Now let's take a look at the difference between the cost of the visits for each company for this claim I just described. As you can see, for Company A, going to the ER or the injured employee's family doctor was much more expensive per trip than going to the treating physician chosen by the employer, which is what the injured employee from Company B did. As we all know, a trip to the ER is always more expensive due to the copay and sometimes the cost of different tests they run, so avoiding the ER at all costs is always helpful. The downfall of going to a family doctor is sometimes it results in additional visits or prescriptions that are not necessary, which also increase the cost per visit. If a treating physician is established for the medical protocol, most of the time some of these costs can be reduced. With Company A, the injured employee lost time at work, therefore resulting in an indemnity payment. The possibility could have been that the employee was unable to return to work due to the type of injury, but part of having a medical protocol means the doctor understands your job duties and works to get the injured worker back to work as soon as possible, even if it's light duty. Light duty is when a doctor will give permission for the injured worker to return to work with restrictions. By doing this, we found that the injured worker has self-worth and ultimately puts them on the right track to get back to work and will help to reduce the cost of the claim. So to sum it up, Company A's total loss for the claim was a little over $4,700, and for Company B, the total loss was about $350. As you can see, this is a difference of about $4,400 for the exact same type claim. Now that you have a good understanding of why implementing a medical protocol can be helpful in reducing the cost per visit, let's discuss ultimately how losses affect your workers' compensation costs. As we all strive to have a safe workplace, sometimes it's impossible to keep accidents from happening. What we can do, though, is once an accident occurs, we can learn how to ensure it doesn't happen again so we don't have reoccurring accidents. Studies have found that frequent losses often result in the occurrence of several losses. This is what we strive to avoid. Losses are a part of how workers' compensation costs are calculated. Losses are a part of what dictates what your experience mod is. And an experience mod are calculations based on the most recent 3 years and ultimately have a part in determining workers' comp costs. The more occurrence of losses are typically worse than one large loss. Even though the experience mod and losses are significant, there are other values such as payroll and rates that play into the calculation of workers' comp. Now let's try to explain that a bit more in layman terms. Back to the comparison of Company A and Company B. This, again, is a comparison of two similar companies with the same type of business and payroll and have the possibility of similar accidents which would occur. For each of these companies, it shows the most recent 3 years of total losses. As you can see, Company A, again, has no medical protocol in place and has losses for 2015 totaling $10,000, for 2016, $9,000, and for 2017, $9,000. Once the calculations are done, it shows that Company A has an experience mod of 1.17. And for Company B, who does have a medical protocol in place, their total losses for 2015 were $7,000, for 2016, $6,000, and for 2017, $6,000. As you can see, just having a medical protocol in place reduced their overall losses each year significantly. And after the calculations are done, Company B has an experience mod of 1.09. So Company A has an increase of 8% over Company B. Ultimately, this means that Company A's workers' compensation costs will be much higher than Company B for the same type of business. So why do we highly recommend implementing a medical protocol? It helps to save you, the insured, time and money, and it allows for one main point of contact for all employees if they're injured. And by setting up one main treating physician, you have someone looking out for you, the employer, and your injured employees. They have the best interest in mind and try to get your workers back to work as soon as possible, to include light duty. They can also help with prescription programs to make it easier for your employees to get prescriptions filled. Lastly, it helps keep your experience mod low and reduces workers' compensation costs. As for the workers' compensation company, by you, the member, implementing a medical protocol helps to reduce the doctor's offices we deal with and helps reduce medical costs, which in the end reduces workers' compensation to you, the insured. Now to recap. As Scott talked about, what's a medical protocol? It's a protocol that you have the employer set up choosing a physician's office that your employees will use if they get injured on the job. And to begin setting up a medical protocol, you can contact Alacomp for a recommended list of doctors in your area or choose one on your own. Then begin to reach out to them to set the process up for the medical protocol. And the main reason why set up a medical protocol, in the end, it saves you time and money. So remember, taking the time in the beginning to set up a medical protocol can save you money in the end and over time. After the webinar, if you have any questions regarding any of the documents that Scott talked about or just any questions about the medical protocol, please feel free to contact Scott Hunter or Jim Halford in Loss Control Department. And you can see the phone numbers on here along with their email. And now we'll take any questions you may have.
Thank you, Kelly. At this time, we would like to take any questions you might have. If you would like to ask a question, simply press star, then the number 1 on your telephone keypad. If you would like to withdraw your question, press the pound key. And as a reminder, you may also ask a question through your web console. Locate the Q&A panel on the lower right-hand corner of your screen, type your question in the open area, and click Send to submit. Please also take a moment to complete the survey that will show on your screen after the conclusion of today's webinar. We appreciate your feedback. Presenters, I'll turn it back over to you for Q&A.
All right, do we have any questions?
Again, if you want to ask a question, please press star and the number 1 on your telephone keypad. There are no further questions at the moment. You may continue.
That's a good question. Yes, one of the very few rights that employers have in Alabama is the right to choose the treating physician. So the answer to that is yes. The second part of that is why don't you want him to go to his personal doctor? His personal doctor may not be an occupational medicine type who is not really employer friendly. And, you know, we all come from little small towns in Alabama, and your personal doctor may be the guy that delivered you, you know, and you typically present to him with a problem, and he says, well, hey, John, I haven't seen you in a long time. You get hurt at work? Oh, yeah, I can see that. How many days off do you think you need? You want some Lortab? We want to avoid a situation like that. By just making sure that we pick a good company doctor that has occupational medicine experience and is employer friendly. And I might add that should be a policy in your company handbook. You know, this might be an employee that has been a real handle for you. If you have a policy in the handbook that says under no circumstances do you go to your own doctor when you're injured. Part of your work comp injury reporting process is you must report the injury immediately and you must go to the company physician. If they break that policy, that gives you a little wiggle room there for some disciplinary action. You certainly can't discipline them for getting hurt, but you can for breaking company policy. So that's a good question.
If the employee is not satisfied with the company physician, what are his or her options? His option is to choose from a panel of 4. And Ms. May, you'd need to contact, for that situation, you'd need to contact Evelyn Thomas here in our claims department, and she could get that set up for you.
Yeah, as soon as you have an employee who goes to the doctor and comes back and says, hey, I don't like that doctor, I'm not going back to them, just immediately call up, talk to our claims people, and they'll handle it from there. There is a protocol for that.
Again, if you want to ask a question, please press star and the number 1 on your telephone keypad. Again, that is star 1 on your telephone keypad.
All right, any other questions?
There are no further questions at the moment. You may continue.
All right, if there are no further questions, we appreciate everybody's attendance. Again, our contact information is there. If you have any questions, feel free to contact either Jim or myself at the emails listed here on the slide or at the number listed. Again, we appreciate your attendance. Thank you.
Thank you again for joining us today. Please take a moment to complete the survey that will show on your screen after closing the meeting. Your feedback is important to us. This concludes today's web conference. You may now disconnect.